Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm trying something a little bit different today. As you can see, instead of seeing my shiny, happy face, all that's available is a logo, albeit it is sort of animated. So that's cool, but that doesn't matter. Most people don't want to look anyway. Most people want to listen, but this is helping me out as far as streaming. So none of that is important right now, but let's talk about what is important. We are going to discuss MAHA today. And for those of you who don't know, MAHA is RFK Jr.'s health initiative, and the focus of it is transforming public health in America. The idea is to shift away from managing disease and tackle actual root causes. And this is, as you can imagine, very much in line with what we talk about here. I think this is where the consciousness of a lot of the American public is. We deal a lot with drugs in this country. Conventional medicine is all about drugs, but we don't address root causes. And because we have that orientation, that reactive treats symptoms with drugs orientation, we tend to get a little lax about the things that actually create health. And now enter our hero, RFK Jr., the flawed man who's trying to take it all on. He is now the lead at HHS, Health and Human Services, which is this sprawling federal organization that contains within it many departments that affect public health. And we've talked about him before. We can't talk about his movement, MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again, without speaking about this gentleman, because he is such a controversial figure. He's someone who I tend to give the benefit of the doubt to, because I like his approach. I think his intention is correct, and I'm rooting for him. That doesn't mean I don't have my eyes open. He's an interesting cat. He's unstable. People are worried about him. Some people are. Other people aren't. Other people are just thrilled. So I find myself kind of staking out both positions. I'm a little skeptical, but very, very hopeful. I don't think anyone has articulated the problems of health in this country in the same way that he has. This is one of the things that I like about him, as well as his focus, his plan on proving health in this country by looking at root causes, which is not something I've heard articulated by heads of HHS in the past. I mean, they tend to be more focused on structure or bureaucracy. And RFK Jr. is addressing those things, but only to the degree or to the aim of fixing health in this country. It is a focused kind of initiative. Now, how does this affect us? Why does this matter? Why am I discussing this? Well, because there is no doubt, and this becomes more and more apparent to me every single day, that the macro, what is happening at the upper levels in our country, what's happening politically, governmentally, legislatively, does filter down. It does affect our health. We all live on this crazy planet together. Uh, and uh, let's face it, I mean, we are in a toxic environment, and that can only happen when legislation allows for that kind of toxicity. And there are companies, be they agricultural companies or chemical companies, that don't care so much, that want to sell their products and that want to improve shelf life and that want to get greater yields. And they don't care necessarily about what they're putting out into the environment. So somebody has to. And that's why we have regulatory agencies. And that's why people were very excited about RFK Jr., pardon me, and this MAHA movement. In fact, it might have tipped the election. The Republicans and Donald Trump were very smart to embrace this guy. He brought with him constituents. Constituents? Maybe not officially. He brought fans, he brought voters. So, this is why we're going to talk about it, because it affects us on an individual basis. I am not sure about this because there is no diagnostic criteria, but I think that I have long COVID. Since COVID, I have had various effects. I've been diagnosed with various things that may have existed to some degree before COVID, but they've been exacerbated. Tendencies have been realized and exacerbated. And that story is not unique to me because I've spoken to other people and I've done some research. And it does seem like that's the case. And it seems like that is likely the case, whether it was from COVID or whether it was from COVID vaccine. So either way, these stressors on our body seem to provoke certain issues. So again, the macro does affect the micro. Legislation that's passed today could be beneficial or deleterious tomorrow. And this is why it matters. So, what has happened so far? I promised a check-in, an update. How is this fledgling movement doing in one of the largest departments in the world? One with many, many sub-departments. In fact, there are 28 agencies within HHS. Now, one of the things that RFK Jr. wants to do, has begun doing, is reorganizing HHS. He feels that it is too large, that it is too redundant, that it needs to be streamlined. So he's merging these 28 agencies into 15 under his new Administration for a Healthy America. Now, the acronym for that is AHA. I can't help but laugh. We have MAHA, we have AHA, and really it makes me go, ha. I dig the acronyms to a point. I could see where it would get out of hand. But he's fired thousands of staff, especially from the CDC. I think he's fired overall has been like 20,000 people have been let go, trying to make this more efficient agency. This also dovetails with the goals of the Trump administration to try to lessen federal spending, which I don't think has been successful, but the effort is there. And now, this has to be known, is that when you are part of this gigantic department with all of these agencies underneath you and you fire thousands of people, there's going to be some pushback, and there has been. And in fact, the agency has been enjoined from firing any more people or reorganizing anything else for the time being. A federal judge did that. Some people think that they went too fast, and I think they have a a reasonable position. You know, it turns out if you fire people from health agencies, some of those people are going to be important and they're going to matter. So, for example, there are inspectors, people that are looking at our food, and there are fewer of those right now. You know, there are other experts in infectious disease, for example. So, RFK Jr. has said himself that he's going to be rehiring people. Maybe as much as 20% of the people that were fired will be rehired. And that does beg the question, well, why fire them in the first place? What happened to measure twice, cut once? I mean, it might be wiser to, study things a little more before you make these rapid changes. Other people feel, well, listen, you have to just get in there and you have to shake things up. You have to break a few eggs, right? And that has been done, and it has been stopped, and it will be reversed to some degree. And we'll see how that works out. In addition, there has been a policy change regarding the COVID vaccine. So here's one of the biggest flashpoints. RFK Jr. removed the CDC's blanket recommendation for COVID vaccines in healthy kids and in pregnant women. So now it's up to a shared decision between patients and doctors, and pregnant women have no recommendation at all. Now, this has been also controversial, and I don't know that it should be. It seems somewhat semantic to me. Semantic or semantical? You have major medical groups, they are now suing, saying that this move bypassed scientific review and it puts vulnerable people at risk. However, wasn't it always the case that people made their personal health and medical decisions in consultation with their doctors? See, this is just about a recommendation. So instead of having this blanket recommendation that's made from on high, now it's recommended that women consult with their doctors and they make a decision together. I don't see that as being that big a deal. Other people do. They think it's going to influence people in the wrong direction. Now, why does that matter? Are people still dying from COVID? Well, apparently they are. I am skeptical of these numbers because I looked up these numbers and I'm skeptical of them because I don't know anyone who's died. By the way, I don't want to put a jinx on anything by talking about it. Right? Baseball fans know you're never supposed to discuss a no-hitter with the pitcher during the game, but I don't know anybody who's contracted COVID lately, the past few months. I certainly don't know anyone who's died. I don't think I know anyone who knows anyone who's died recently. But the statistics say that people are still dying from COVID, and to a greater degree than we thought, than I thought. Right now, I think they're saying on average that like 350 people are dying every week. Now, I don't even think that's current information because I looked at a chart put out by the CDC, and last week it was like 60 people only, so I think there's a little lag in that kind of communication where they're giving data about something that happened months ago, or who knows, maybe it was in 2024. So I'm sorry I don't have more context about that. I find it hard to believe that 350 Americans are dying every week of COVID just because of personal experience, because that is a couple of 100,000 people a year. But my understanding is that more people are dying of COVID than are dying of the flu. And as we know, every year, people die of the flu, and it's estimated that it's anywhere from like 5,000 to 70,000 a bad year, whatever the number. I mean, these numbers get crazy and confusing. But the point is, it's still happening. It's mostly the elderly and people with conditions, and that has always been the case, which is another reason why it's probably not such a big deal if your suggestion to women is that they make their decisions in consultation with their doctors regarding their children and their pregnancies. Okay? So again, here's where we are right now. There's been layoffs. There's been closures at HHS. It has been enjoined by a federal judge. That is halted for now. Meanwhile, RFK Jr. is looking to simplify U.S. dietary guidelines. Now, he put together a commission to look at some things, and naturally that was controversial. Also, apparently they relied on AI. AI doesn't always give the most accurate information. From my understanding, the mistakes that were made were not major mistakes. They weren't a big deal, but people looking for issues are going to find them, right? And that's not ideal. And caveat, people, if you are using AI in your job, if you're using AI to help you in some kind of official capacity, always check the work. By the way, there's no extra charge for this warning. Uh, this is just from me to you, from one person to another, because we are seeing a lot of cases, especially attorneys. Yesterday, attorneys in a high profile case got sanctioned because of their use of AI. They did not check the work. The AI model that they used made up cases. Can you imagine? It inserted quotes that never happened. I mean, that's pretty bad stuff. So it's a wonderful tool. It's going to get even better. There's going to be a point in time where it doesn't make these mistakes. But right now, it is like a very stupid teenager. It makes things up if it doesn't know the answer. It tries to please the owner. It's the way it's programmed. Uh, it always has an answer. It doesn't say "I don't know." It makes things up instead of doing that. It's a fascinating thing. It hallucinates. Okay, so just be careful about that. But that it happened with this report. But this report was looking at toxicity in our environment. It was looking at some of the causes of childhood illness. So that's another thing that's going on. Okay. As far as the dietary guidelines in the US, the problem with that historically has been that they've been put out by agricultural companies, people with vested interests, financial interests. And as a result, the food pyramid is not wonderful as far as dietary recommendations go. So they're also looking at that. And I think that's a proper thing. Here's how I conceive of this and I think it's the proper conceptualization and why I'm rooting for RFK Jr. and I think he has his focus in the right place because there's a goal. Think of another pyramid, really. Think of an algorithm. There's a goal. We place that at the top. The goal is to improve the health of individuals in our country, especially children, right? Well, the next step is, what is interfering the most with health in our country? And it turns out, at least theoretically, the hypothesis is that it's our food supply is poor, it's lacking in nutrients, it has too many toxins. We have something on the order of 800 chemicals that are allowed on our food in this country that in Europe are banned. And then we look at the chemicals in the environment, and there are 80,000 chemicals that are in our environment that we are confronted with on a daily basis. And the assumption is that this is a big toxic load on our systems. I think it's a fair assumption. And these are some of the biggest causes of disease in our society. So that's the next layer of this kind of algorithmic pyramid that we are imagining. And then we go down from there and we see a further problem. And the further problem is that it's hard to address the problems that are causing ill health because of lack of transparency, because of things like lobbying by certain companies, because of inefficiency in our health agencies, right? So now we have to address those, and those are structural changes. So this is a thinking dude, in my opinion. He's got his head in the right place. I think that kind of a very logical progression, a way to look at it, a way to perceive it is correct. You have to address those structural issues. It's one of the problems when it comes to public policy is that sometimes people are addressing the effects and they're never getting the cause. Okay, so my question is RFK Jr. doing the right thing? Is he making the right moves or is he doing too much too fast? or not fast enough. There are a plethora of opinions about this, as there are about everything else in public discourse. But I would like to know from some of you. You could private message me, or you can put it in the chat. But it is an interesting, thing to look at. Sometimes incrementalism is not the right approach, and then sometimes it is. The approach so far has been somewhat of a blitzkrieg, and mistakes are then inevitable. But if you perceive that the problem is big enough, a blitzkrieg might be what's needed. Get in there, shake things up. That's what's happening right now. Okay. How do you feel about the changes to the COVID vaccine recommendations? Is that the right thing? And do you think that we need a public health system that is focusing more on prevention, on natural health care, and on cause-based issues, or the basis of disease? This is something that I've said over and over and over again, and people who are paying attention know this. We are a very unhealthy country. And I'm afraid that we might be getting less healthy. We are the wealthiest country in the world, which makes us the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We have more doctors, more hospitals, more health infrastructure than anyone else. We spend more on health than anyone else. It's over $2 trillion. I don't have the latest numbers, but it's over $2 trillion. I believe it's over $9,000 per capita. This is much more than other countries spend, other developed nations. And yet we have the worst health outcomes among developed nations, or some of the worst. I think it's the very worst, but I like to qualify things so it doesn't seem like I am speaking hyperbolically or like I'm being dishonest. Okay? But I will definitely stand by this, which I think most anybody would, is we are paying an awful lot and we have poor outcomes. So that is why this is a pressing issue. All right. So drop your thoughts in the comment section. I do want to hear from you. Like I said, you're welcome to DM me. For some reason, everything is controversial these days, and people are very reluctant to make their feelings known. But if you have strong feelings, go ahead and express them. I want to thank you for joining me. This is a quick discussion about MAHA, right? Obviously, we can get as far down the road as you can imagine, right? These things tend to have layers. We can speak about it from today till tomorrow, but this was kind of a quick update. I will keep bringing these updates up. Did I express that well? I will bring these updates up. I will continue to update. Stay healthy, stay informed, and I will speak to everybody soon. And who knows, maybe I'll stick to this audio only format.